Hi, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on my show. It's so great to see you as always.
Hi, Leena. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I'm so happy to be chatting with you today.
Of course, I'm so excited to talk to you about all the things. And I know, we've talked about this across months, and you and I are both stepping into a similar space of this honoring of, the sacredness of spirituality, but also the honoring of the human and the messiness and all the things that come with that. And I think we can both agree that there's this version of spirituality that we see on Instagram. And when we're first starting out, it can be really hard not to compare ourselves to that or to want to adopt the look or the words or the jargon. And the true growth and the true, our own spiritual practice isn't as glamorous as it's meant, made out to be online. So I am so excited for you to just bring us back to the sacred, the sacred practices that we may be overlooking. We're going to learn something today, which I'm so excited for. But before we get into learning about these words, I thought we could talk a little bit more about, what it means to honor. And we were just talking about this before, like the relative reality of our human existence versus the spiritual reality that, like we were saying, can be a little bit too much, good vibes only. It's rainbows, it's unicorns, it's sparkly, and all you have to do is believe that there's a higher truth and that's it. But
Yeah.
then it negates, the suffering and the chapters and the seasons of grief and hardship that we go through in our lives.
Yes, exactly. And spirituality has saved me. I've gone through a lot of loss, a lot of trauma. And I have to say, with all the therapy I've been through, it is the one thing, my spiritual practice and meditation practice is the one thing that has grounded me all these years. It is so incredibly powerful. And there is so much truth to spiritual practice. The way I studied it is at the end of the day, we are all one. We're all connected
Hmm.
by one single thread. There's just different names and forms, as they say.
Right.
And they always use the example of clay. You walk into a store of all these ceramics, and you see a bowl, and you see a little dog, and you see a vase, but the basis of them all is exactly the same. It's the clay.
Mm.
So it's going back to that oneness, one love, and we are all consciousness, existence, bliss is what they call it. They call it Satchit Ananda, which is consciousness, existence, bliss. And so I truly, as you said, the spiritual truth that, at the crux of it is we are all made of happiness, of love, of bliss, of existence, of this truth. But at the same time, we're also human,
Yeah.
right? So it's important to also acknowledge our own experiences, to feel the anger when it comes up, to feel the sadness when it comes up, to go through the process of grieving. And for me, it's almost like I do live in this kind of dual space of honoring my human experience, but also acknowledging, whether it be in meditation or when I'm connecting with nature, that there's a connectedness amongst us all. And at the end of the day, it's all about realizing that. That's why they call it realization.
That's a very good point. I've realized this is the third time it's happened in the past few months for me where my humanness has just, I've felt the emotions, gotten to that point of things happening in my human life where I break down and I let the emotion rise through me. I let it happen. I feel it. I grieve it. And then it's almost like the universe instantly switches once that's released. And it's like, let me remind you how divine you actually are. And here's something to remind you. Now that you're done humaning, here's something really magical. And it's happened 3 times in the last few months. I'm like, isn't that just a beautiful testament of that balance and that ebb and flow we go through between our humanity and our divinity, and navigating it, even though it kind of feels like, which one should I be doing now? How do I human? How do I be this like
Yeah,
spiritual magical person? But it's not easy.
it's not easy. And don't overthink it when you're do what feels natural, you know. And I love how you said, you know, you allow yourself to feel it and then you let it go, and then, you know, you have this overwhelming feeling or signs from the universe that you're okay or you are connected, or, you know, you can sit in this bliss after going through all that. And you know, I've co-authored this book, Let That Shit Go, because I want everyone to go back to our true nature. You know, when you think of us as toddlers or as infants, we were inherently happy.
Mm.
You know, that is our true nature. That's why when we feel happiness and joy and bliss, we feel so good because we're going back home,
Yeah.
you know. But what's happened in tweenhood and teenhood and adulthood is we've built up all this shit along the way with all these human experiences. And so
Yeah.
the more we can acknowledge it, because you can't really let anything go until you look at it, work through it, acknowledge it, then you can let it go. So that part is so important, to feel what you need to feel. And yeah, it's ebbs and flows, right? You'll have moments where you're having that human experience and that's okay, and there's moments where you're just sitting in complete bliss and appreciation for the universe and nature and existence. It's incredible.
So let's use that as a transition into you teaching us, because I think that when we get to adulthood, or from my experiences and speaking to others, and we're in adulthood, we're starting to remember that's our natural state, joy, and we're stepping onto a spiritual path, and we exist in this modern world with technology, and we start to explore yoga, or affirmations
Mhm.
and meditation, and we start to see these terms being used in this way of living and existing. It can be very easy to get wrapped up into that unconsciously, like I said. And I think to take a step back and to really dive into the sacred practices that basically, you know, the West has stolen, let's be real,
Yeah.
and has put a price tag on, how can we be more conscious? How can we understand where these terms are coming from? And how can we, honor the culture? I think is something that should be a very important part at the beginning of our path, that isn't necessarily talked about, because again, they're stolen they're stolen rituals and words that are now part of $1 billion industry. So
Industry. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I love that. And I so appreciate that. And I'm all for the decolonization of wellness, you know, as they
same.
call it. You know, I love that you are bringing this to surface and talking about it. And I think it's an important conversation to have, because I do think there's so much richness that we're missing out on. You know,
Yeah.
I lived in an ashram for a year and I studied under many, you know, swamis from India and, you know, around the world. And, you know, when I see what's out there now, it's just, it's grazing the surface of like so much depth.
Yeah.
You know, for 1 year, we had 4 lectures a day and we went through many texts. And I still feel like in that year, we grazed the surface. You know, so there is just so much richness and so much depth that I think we're missing out on. And people are kind of capitalizing on just this part.
Yeah.
And some people not doing it well, obviously, or honoring, you know, the roots. So I appreciate what you're doing.
So before we get into learning some words and how they're pronounced and the true meaning, and diving in deeper, is there anything that you wish that we knew about this culture that we are taking these words from?
Oh, wow. That's such a big question. What I love to sit in is that spirituality, might get some backlash for this, but spirituality is not religion. The truths that came from India came from rishis tens that like 10,000 years ago, and were messages that were delivered through nature. Like inherently these rishis were able to receive these messages and spew them out, and then they were turned into sacred texts. And that was before Hinduism was developed. So when we go back to some of these origins, it's really the connection to nature, the connection to the universe, the connection to all that exists versus deities and
Yeah.
and I think that there's beauty in religion if used in the right way. But a lot of people say that it's a stepping stone
Yeah.
to this greater truth.
I think that's the thing that bothers me the most of kind of the labels that have been put on modern day spirituality, where they call it new age or woo woo. And we're like, no, 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 this is very ancient sacred wisdom that we're just now, re embodying and re accepting as a universal truth. And to label it as new age is just further disconnecting us from the fact, that we are all one and we are part of this experience with the earth and with the universe. And so I love so much that you said that it came before Hinduism, because I think we just, when you're not on the path or you're kind of just an outsider watching it, it's very easy to see it as like the capitalistic wellness industry business, and not as, a sacred human truth that has been, passed down through the lineages for thousands of years.
Exactly, exactly. Beautifully put.
So you ready to get into it?
Ready? Are you ready?
I don't know. Yes, I am. I'm always ready to learn and to be have a higher perspective and understanding of everything. So, yes.
I definitely are, Lena. I love it. You're such an open, incredible soul, and you're actually helping me bring this to surface. Because to be honest, when I came back from the ashram in 2011, I was like, I can't talk about all this stuff that I learned. Like, what are people going to say? How is this going to be received? And you're one of the people that are encouraging me to bring all this forth. So thank
Well,
you. I
I think
so
it's
appreciate it.
time. I think
Yeah,
it's time because I think we're unconsciously consuming spirituality in a way that is not honoring that the sacredness of our humanity. And when
exactly.
we're consuming, capitalism thrives on the idea that we're separate and that we're worthy, and we're just perpetuating that by not understanding the depth to it.
Yeah, and there's ego in that, right? And that
Yeah.
perpetuates, everything that's happened to this beautiful earth. It
Yep.
perpetuates, a lack of compassion. It perpetuates being competitive, and
Yeah.
takes
Greed.
away from that oneness. Yeah, that greed. So
Mhm.
it is so powerful when we can sit in that oneness. Even all the, the fight for social justice and all that is, it's so sacred and it's so important. And the more that we see how much we are connected versus different, that's where true compassion and love comes in.
I completely agree. And I think it changes the way that we understand, how we're living our lives. Because I think when we can understand, the depths to these spiritual practices and rituals, it changes our perspective from, the businesses that we're buying from, because we can kind of see through the facade of capitalism. And it changes, the coaches and mentors that we work with who are, more conscious in the rituals and the words that they're using. And I think it changes the way that we're living intentionally. So I think anytime we can learn and understand on a deeper level is just, it radiates change to the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
All right.
All
First
right.
word.
First word is namaste. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. Yeah. So not namaste, or people say namaste, or all the ridiculous
Namaste at
things.
home with my dog. That's the
Yeah,
one.
exactly. It's just namaste. And the meaning of that is that it's essentially I salute to you. And some people acknowledge that it also means the divinity in me recognizes the divinity in you, because really we are all one. And so when we're bowing to each other, there's humility in that, there's a humbleness in that, of not having the ego, taking the ego out of it, taking separation out of it, taking duality out of it,
Hmm.
and seeing the oneness in each other, because we're all enlivened by the same thing.
So when we use that term, should it always be with hands in the bow, or can it be used separately? Are they all one practice?
Traditionally in India, when people say namaste, they do use the hand gesture, or they do like a slight nod, like namaste. It's a form of greeting, so the hands just bring all that more respect to it. It's it can still be said without the hand gesture, but I think where we need to be careful is, and again, the colonization of it is, all these words that are driven from namaste that just take the sacred out of it and borderline disrespect, the original Sanskrit.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think that's the one I feel like that gets, has been westernized and capitalized the most.
Yeah.
I mean, you can walk into any store and find shirts, and signs and wall art and all these
Yeah.
things that say it.
Yes, definitely. And so I think if we really want to go back to honoring, the origins, then truly understand what it means and use it in that context.
Good to know. All
Yeah.
right. Second word,
Second word is guru.
guru.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Leena, guru. So a lot of people say guru. Um, and the dissection of the word in Sanskrit, gu actually means darkness, and ru means light.
Hmm.
So a guru is one who can take you from darkness, or when they say darkness in Sanskrit, they really mean ignorance, meaning someone who isn't yet aware of this beautiful truth that we are. And then ru means light or wisdom. So
Oh.
someone who takes you from ignorance to wisdom. And there's a lot of tradition around this. They call it the Guru Shishya Parampara, which is, the guru teaching the student, and then that student becoming a guru teaching it, and
Yeah.
kind of having that lineage as you talked about earlier. So in India, or sorry, I shouldn't say just in India, but in the culture, in the traditions, gurus are so highly regarded and respected and revered. I'll caveat that to say there have been spiritual leaders out there that have taken advantage of that. So we need to be obviously careful who we engage with. But I mean, I have met some remarkable swamis who, I wouldn't have this knowledge, or I wouldn't be, where I am today without their wisdom. So there's a lot of respect because these swamis or these gurus have done the work. They've probably, you know, lived in ashrams for years. They've studied the Gita, they've studied Upanishads, all these sacred texts. They know Sanskrit. And so when you learn from a true guru, it's humbling, it's incredible, the knowledge that they have and the wisdom.
Do you see this word or even the idea of a guru being taken advantage of in, the colonization of spirituality?
I think it is used a lot more lightly
Hmm.
than
Yeah.
traditional, culture or real spiritual seekers. I would say real spiritual seekers will say to have one guru and to just follow them for life, to renounce, and that's kind of the tradition. And some of the swamis I learned from, I mean, spent 7 years just learning from one guru, you know, all these truths. And so when someone's like, "Oh, you're my guru," and it's like they've taught them for 2 weeks or something, it's
Right.
really trivialized.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two things that come to mind for me. Is the one is the phrase which I'm very guilty of using is be your own guru.
Yes.
And
Yep.
then the second one is that we exist in a culture now, with online business marketing of self proclaimed gurus
Yes.
who, they have taken the entrepreneurship classes and the online marketing classes, and the spiritual entrepreneur space looks like a good place to live in. And I'm going to be, your coach. And I think there's these all these steps in between that are very sacred that we're missing out on, which is the learning and the humble learning and the
Yeah.
the work. And so thank you so much for sharing that, because I think there is, I love that you said that it kind of takes away that deeper meaning and weight to the word.
Yes. That said, um, I'll address both things you said. The first one being, be your own guru. I I'm an advocate of that too, because we know ourselves best. And
Yeah.
some people in the lineage would I'd get in trouble for saying this, but I really do feel like only we understand our own experiences. We understand our own traumas. We understand our own conditionings. We understand our own limitations,
Yeah.
and a guru can guide you. Um, and that can be very, very incredible and sacred. But at the end of the day, we have to put in the work. We have
Yes.
to acknowledge, our challenges. And so I do think that phrase of being your own guru is also important, getting the knowledge, but then how does that apply to you? Because a lot of the gurus I studied under were from India and grew up in India and didn't have the same conditionings and challenges that I
Right.
grew up with. So I had to kind of take my experience and also understand, what does this mean for me? How does
Yes.
this apply to me? Um, and the second part, of the entrepreneurship, it's so challenging because modern day colonialism have we've created certificates, yoga instructor,
Yes.
mindfulness certificate, and it's like I have my own business. I've had it for, I'm 4.5 years into teaching mindfulness and meditation to communities and companies, and I have not done one mindfulness certificate. Does that mean I'm not qualified? I spent a year at an ashram. I've learned this stuff since I was 16. I've been learning under swamis. I'm 40 now, so this business and an industry that we've created, it's like, who is to say who is certified here or there? So it's mind-boggling sometimes on social, because I'll find someone call themselves a Vedic expert, and it's like, if a swami saw that it was a 21-year-old woman who literally studied for 6 months, I mean, you're not a Vedic expert. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
According to what?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think we need to be really careful when we, label ourselves and do this certification, or do it's and or as a student, when we find people and they call themselves certain things,
Yes.
ask the questions.
Yes.
What does this mean? Did you do a 1 month program? Did you, how long have you been embodying this? How long have you been studying this?
Yeah.
We need to be really careful with who we seek wisdom and teachings from.
My spirit guides always stress to me that in our capitalistic society, we've been conditioned to choose beauty over wisdom. So if someone has, really beautiful graphics and, tons of Instagram followers, we've been conditioned to believe that that's credible information, instead of, someone who maybe is a swami and has 10, 10, 100 Instagram followers, but has, decades of wisdom. And I think it's a little back ass words the way that that we're going about
Exactly.
it.
Man, that swami's probably not on Instagram. He's probably
Yep.
meditating under a tree.
Exactly.
Like, yes, that's such a good point. Like, so much can be masked, right, with
Yes.
our perceived beauty, and that can be mistaken for wisdom.
Yeah. I think and it's funny how we're starting to, show the light on the filters on our own appearance, but we haven't gotten that far with, the knowledge and the wisdom yet, but I feel like it's coming.
It's coming. There's a moving and shaking and a lot shifting
Yep.
in this space. Yeah.
I hope so. Okay, next word.
Next word is mantra.
Mantra.
Good. That was great. That was
I've been
awesome.
practicing.
Yeah, have you been looking at my videos?
Yes.
I was impressed with that one because that one has the R, the roll, mantra. So it's become mantra,
Yep.
you
Or
know,
mantra. Mantras.
mantra, mantra. And again, like we're not, I'm not shading anyone, but like, learn the true pronunciation. And so the Sanskrit dissection of that is that man means mind in Sanskrit, and tra is to transport.
Mm.
So powerful, right? So a mantra will transport your mind, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm living by this mantra." It's not, in tradition, it's not a phrase to live by, or a little phrase to say something to yourself. Some people are like, "Oh, let that shit go, it's such a great mantra." And it's a true mantra is um, often given to you, by your guru, or something that you feel a lot of affinity towards, that brings a lot of peace. Maybe it does involve a god, and a lot of in this tradition we do japa, which is the repetition of a word. So a lot of practitioners have a rosary, or what we call a mala, with beads. And you got one, do you? Yes. There you go.
108, right?
108. Yes, exactly. Woohoo. Leena knows her stuff. Yeah, there's usually 108 beads, and the significance of 108. It's funny. I just watched a video on the significance of 108, but there's a lot of natural, I'm not going to say it's right, but natural geometry with 108, like the distance between the earth and the sun is 108 something. And
Interesting.
so there's a lot of nature involved in that number. And so traditionally you would take your mantra and you would take your beads, and there's a specific way that it sits on your hand, and you would go through each bead in a meditation and say the mantra over and over and over and over and over again. And what it does is it brings a lot of calming to
Mm.
the mind, and it allows you to transport your mind from, a very chatty monkey mind to a very kind of peaceful, tranquil place.
Right. So then they should really only be used in sacred meditation.
I'd say that's how they're traditionally used. I mean, I
Gotcha.
love affirmations. I love when people say, these are the words I live by. Like, is that traditionally a mantra? No. But I think having a phrase or a word to live by can be very empowering.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's probably not a mantra. A mantra is something, yeah, you would say to yourself over and over. I think a lot of people who practice transcendental meditation are given a mantra, and that's what transcendental meditation is. They just repeat it over
Interesting.
and over again, to to the point where they get transcended.
That's good to know because I think that one's misused a lot, and I
It
think
is.
it's such a colloquialism now that we use in our exactly what you said, my mantra to live by, and like a mantra for this or a mantra for that, and I think bringing it back to the sacred, I love the the definition of it because I think that really roots it in its purpose of transporting your mind.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's where the power is. Like if we can go back to the original nature of all these words and really understand them and really lean in, like it's all the more empowerment to you,
Yeah,
to be using them correctly, because there's so much in each little the Sanskrit language. Apparently it's one of the most difficult languages in the world. I learned it when like literally know like 0.001%, but every day we had Sanskrit class at the ashram, and wow, the brilliance of the language and how each word is so dissectable.
yeah,
It'll only help us to really understand, the core and the truth of it.
I think so too. So
Yeah.
last word.
Last word that often gets misused, and again, I don't. This is not something I know a lot about, but it often gets misused, and it makes energy healers cringe. Is chakra.
Yes,
Okay, and so a lot of people say chakra.
yes,
They do sh. It's chakra.
chakra.
Yeah, chakra. And a chakra is actually very simply a wheel. And so we have 72,000 chakras in the body,
Wow.
but there's 7 main ones that you often see, the rainbow color from bottom to
Hmm.
top, the root chakra, the solar plexus, all the way up to the crown chakra. So this one's more of, again, and I got into chakras, I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago, so I still don't know a lot about them, but I hear the term mispronounced all the
Yeah.
time.
Chakras.
Yeah,
Yep.
yes. So we can just get that one right too. I think, it's going back to honoring the the origination of the word. Is that a word? Origination? Talking about
It
words?
is now.
It is now.
The origin? I
The origin, thank you, of the word is chakra. Yeah.
Chakra.
Yeah.
Does that one have a little R roll too with the
Little chakra. Yeah. Not as much
chakra?
as mantra, um, but a little mini one.
I think chakra is one of the ones that I've seen, mispronounced the most, and it's one of those things that you see it on the internet, you see people talking about it, it becomes part of your vocabulary, and it's one of those things that unless you're willing to dive deeper, it just becomes part, of your spiritual jargon that might be slightly unconscious.
Exactly. Exactly. I've gotten a lot of requests to do to do a reel on the word chakra, like, because, like I said, people who are energy healers and do focus on this space, it just, you know, it's just, it takes away every time and if you're an expert, if you're an energy healer yourself, or you're into crystals, or you're into chakra healing, I mean, it only benefits you to learn the proper pronunciation, because along the way you might lose credibility, right?
I think the other thing that goes without saying in all of this is the vibration of the word and how it's, present in our life. And if you're saying it wrong, then you're not in vibration with the actual like essence of what you're speaking about.
It's such a good point. I love that so much. There's so much energetically that is exchanged in language,
Hmm.
and every pronunciation, even when we would do Sanskrit chanting, we had to do chanting every morning, at 6 o'clock. No, 6 o'clock was meditation, 7 o'clock chanting. And we had to chant every time we ate a meal. The
Wow.
emphasis, it wasn't just your pronunciation, but the emphasis of where you were, you know, certain tones and, certain accents. It was so important. And yes, that feeds into, the energy of saying it correctly is that much more powerful, right?
Yeah, because it's like the intention plus the vibration plus, the
The
release of
understanding.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So thank you for sharing all of this because I think the more that we can learn and understand and be intentional with that, it's just like you said, it makes us that much more powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. It only helps our own journey, and in unlocking all of this, right? We increase our wisdom, we increase our knowledge. It's and we can come from a much more authentic place when we teach, if we're really going back to the roots of everything.
Yeah, I agree. And it's honoring the lineages and the wisdom and the humanity and going full circle, the unity of us all to I think to not honor it is to say that we are separate or better or and I think that does a disservice to humanity as a whole as well.
It absolutely does. And like I said, it goes back to just grazing the surface and not even getting it all right. Like, don't believe everything you see on social media or online or from experts.
Yep.
There's so much more depth. And the more we can access that, the more we can help ourselves and the more we can help others on their journey.
Do you have any recommendations if this conversation sparks something within someone and they're like, oh shit, I've been using all of these wrong. I want to learn more. Do you have any recommendations for texts or things to watch that they can, continue their knowledge on this?
Oh, that's such a great question. Well, I mean, the most sacred texts in the study of Vedanta, which is what I studied, the spiritual truths. It's non-duality, which means we're all one. There's no duality. Are texts called Upanishads, and Upanishads are, there's small ones, there's ones that have a few verses, there's ones that have hundreds of verses, but that is pre-religion core spirituality, and that goes back to the what we were talking about originally of the I am that. At the end of the day, all of the knowledge culminates in I am that. I am everything and nothing at
Mm-hmm.
all. The I am that. So the Sanskrit translation, there's four of them, but I'll use the most common is Tattvamasi. I am that. And so the Upanishads, again, they're really sacred texts. They might be hard to find, but you can Google, there's so much online about them. But if you really want to dig into the truths, then that's where you want to go.
Well, thank you. It's been such a pleasure as always. And like my podcast, I am ending this show with wise words for anyone watching who just needs that extra encouragement to step into their best, more intentional, conscious self today. So, what are your wise words to end on?
Wise words to end on is that it's not a destination, it's a journey. So keep learning, keep healing, keep growing, and trust that you're at exactly the right place in this very moment.